So I once again welcome all of you to Loctopus Law School's webinar on how to be a good negotiator and certain simple tricks and techniques that we'll be sharing with you today. So I'm sure all of you already know, since you have you were attending this webinar. So I'm sure a lot of you know the importance of negotiation as a skill that each lawyer or a law student, or in fact even anybody from say a legal or a non-legal career or background. So just for people who are from I think people are there from diverse backgrounds, right? So could you tell me on the chat box if you're from if you're a law student or you're a legal professional, you could probably write on the chat box and tell us where you are coming from as well. Okay, so Khushi is a law student. Okay, we have so many law students. Okay, you can also mention if you're a legal professional. Okay, we have so many law students. That's great. Okay, I really appreciate there are a lot of people who are still in the first year and you're attending this webinar. That's wonderful, you know. It's great that you're actually wanting to acquire these skills from the initial years of your career from your law school, and that's wonderful. So I really appreciate people who are coming from the first year and second year background. So since most of your law students, you understand the importance, because negotiation is one skill which actually it substantiates into a contract, and that's what decides whether it will go to court or it will actually be a fruitful transaction. So today we are going to be learning about that skill, the most important skill. So I'll quickly contextualize a little bit about it and tell you how we are going to go ahead with the webinar. So in the first 45 minutes, I'll introduce you to the speaker. She's going to walk us through the different types and the different tricks and techniques to become a good negotiator, what is involved in acquiring these skills, and all about negotiation in general. After that, we will also address your queries, whatever queries you have. In case if you have any doubts during the session, I would request you to post your queries on the Q&A box. All of you can see a chat box in front of you and a Q&A box. So we would really appreciate if you could write your queries on a Q&A box so that it does not get lost and we can address it. We'll address it in the middle wherever relevant, but most of the queries will take it at the end so that the rapport of the entire webinar is not lost, right? After that, in the next 20 minutes or so, we will also be briefing you about one of the most important courses that we have at Loctopus Law School, which will actually make sure or help you help yourself gain skills of negotiation very well. So this is how we're going to structure the entire webinar. And now, without further ado, and I would not want to steal away the time that you have allotted for yourself, for your learning. So let me introduce you to our today's speaker, somebody who has taken time out to be here with us. And she is going to be, walking us through all the simple tricks and techniques. So we have Shreyanshi Gupta with us today. She has graduated from NUJS Calcutta, and she has been an ADR, ODR, International Accredited Civil Commercial Mediator. Not just now, but even during law school, she has actually not just participated, but judged a lot of international competitions and even won the 12th NLS NMC 2019 Bangalore. She was also awarded the top 28 recognition at the 22nd International Negotiation Competition 2019 that was in Tokyo. So she has also judged, as I said, that various ADR competitions, at law schools, at GLC Bombay, NLSIU Bangalore, NUJS Calcutta, and so much more. She has been an associate of Trilegal before this, and now finally she's pursuing her passion in writing at Loctopus Law School, and she's a content developer there. So we're so honored to have Shreyanshi today with us. So thank you so much, Shreyanshi, for doing this, and thank you for your time, and over to you. Really excited to learning from you and hoping to have a great engaging session.
Hi, firstly, good evening, everyone. It's so nice to see you all here, and I'm really excited to talk to you all and tell you a little about negotiation. Thank you so much, Akansha. That was a great introduction, and I'm really honored to be here and help our learners do better at negotiation. I mean, when I was in my first or second year, we didn't have sessions like this. So it's really nice that, Loctopus is organizing these sessions and we can impart knowledge which will help learners go far in their careers. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Bittu. It's really nice to have you here. So without further ado, I think I'll get started with the content of the webinar. So firstly, I just want to ask you all, how many of you have any idea of negotiation? Have you done negotiation before? Do you have any idea of it? Just answer a yes or no in the chat box. Okay, so a lot of people are not very aware of negotiation. That's all right. That's the point of this webinar. You will get some basic idea about it in this, and this basic idea will help you, understand where to look forward and read more. And then, you can do your research later once you have this basic foundation, which this webinar will give you. So I'm just going to start sharing my screen and get on with my presentation. How this webinar will be structured is that I will first address what negotiation is and why it's important. Then I'm going to go on to how you identify your role as a negotiator in any negotiation session, be it a competition or be it any real life negotiation. Then I'm going to walk you through the different stages of negotiation. I will be discussing the different elements and features of negotiation as well. Then we'll go on to the mindset which one requires to be a good negotiator. I will also tell you about some interesting techniques you can apply in day-to-day or contract or negotiation competitions. I'll then talk about the skills required to be a good negotiator. And then in the end, I will summarize by giving some general tips for acing negotiations in competitions and daily life. So is this good so far? Okay. So coming on to what negotiation is, and as all of you must be having some basic ideas, all of you must be aware a little. We have a lot of conflicts in our daily life. Those conflicts, they are inevitable. We are humans, we have feelings, emotions, we have conflicts. It's very inevitable to have disagreements every now and then. And these conflicts, they can persist, they can escalate, and there's always a way to resolve them. If the conflicts are not resolved, they can lead to a lot of issues. They can lead to substantial costs, and these costs are avoidable. The consequences of not having a conflict resolved can cause financial, emotional, time burden. So if one is to have a peaceful life and if one is to resolve all these conflicts, how do you do it? It's a very simple thing to do. You communicate. It's really as simple as communicating about it. And negotiation is nothing but communication. So how we define it as is mutual communication. Mutual communication is a communication between different parties for a common end or a common goal, which is agreeable to all of them who are involved in that communication. Essentially, negotiation is nothing but reaching a mutually agreeable conclusion for everyone involved in that conversation. Now, as you all must have said, we negotiate all the time in our daily life. We may be negotiating for a better price for a product, be it food, be it electronics, or any other service we provide. We negotiate for a higher salary during job interviews. We even negotiate with our parents when we want to go on a solo trip or when we want to go with our friends. Even simple conversations with our friends and family can involve some amount of bargaining. Like negotiation is just a fancy word for bargaining according to a lot of people. And apart from these daily examples, we also have some very serious examples of negotiations, such as the Brexit, or the United States and the Taliban, dealing with how United States will leave Afghanistan and how the Taliban will control it. So there have been lots of examples of negotiation all around. And a very common pop culture example, fans of Money Heist must be knowing. So in the first season, Raquel and the professor, they had a lot of interesting negotiations happening regarding the release of hostages. And in the later seasons, you had Alicia Sierra doing it. So, I mean, this is a very common example in pop culture of negotiation. So as we see that negotiations all around us, which is what makes it so important. Negotiation, like I said, it resolves a lot of conflicts. If there are conflicts in your life, it's very difficult to have a peaceful and a stress-free existence, which is without any misunderstanding. Which is why one should have conversations which makes everyone happy, so that everyone can live without these conflicts. Because if conflicts escalate on a personal level, it can damage relationships, and then on a larger scale, on a political level, it can cause a lot of wars, it can cause a lot of crises, and have an actual impact on human lives. Which is why it's very important to negotiate and have that skill of communicating. So, which is why the approach for negotiation should be looking at it as a conversation, which leaves everyone satisfied. We have a lot of negotiation competitions, but the approach to look at it should not be as, okay, this person is against me. But the approach should be that I am having a conversation with the other person. They're also human. They also have some interests and needs, and it should leave us happy. So this is for our daily lives and for serious situations. In the context of law, negotiation is a very important skill for a lawyer, and it comes in place especially during transactions and during contract drafting. We will be discussing this in greater detail in our CDN course by Law Octopus Law School. But in a corporate setting, knowing how to negotiate during contract drafting especially helps a lot in analyzing what the risks are. It helps in parties assessing what their needs and interests are. And the lawyer is able to empower them better using his knowledge, soft skills, and parties and clients can get what they want because the lawyer has good negotiation skills. It can also avoid a lot of disputes in court, because if you have an out of court settlement with the opposite party, you can obviously reach a favorable conclusion, which will be less time consuming and less costly than going to court. So negotiation has a lot of benefits, which is why it's a really important skill. Now, coming on to the part where you identify your role as a negotiator. I hope everyone's clear so far. If there are any question, can you please let me know?
No, Shangshi, we don't have any question. Also, just a request, in case if you have a question, please put it on the Q&A box, all right?
Okay.
And we will address it whenever, as and when it's relevant. Okay. You may go ahead, Shangshi.
Yeah. There was a question in the chat box about how to reach an out-of-court settlement. So this is there are many ways to do it. Negotiation is one of them, and which is what we'll be talking about in this webinar. So, I'm sorry. Yeah. So how you identify your role as a negotiator. So before any negotiation, it is important to understand what role will you be playing in it. So either you can be there to lead the negotiation, you can be there just to vet the solutions that are proposed during the discussion and to see if they are legally enforceable or valid, or if they can be complied with. You can also be there to support your client or be there as an observer. Then you can also be there as a sounding board for your client. If the client has some questions, and you can just be there as a sounding board for your client so they can bounce off their ideas off you. So your role can be a combination of all of these, or distinctly any of these. It really depends upon the expectation your client has of you, and that is something you need to discuss with them beforehand, before the negotiation, so you can prepare and make a strategy accordingly. I'll come to the questions later. The chat box is popping. So but I'll just address it quickly. Actually, what kind of disputes, issues can be negotiated? So it really depends. I mean, criminal issues and all these are something which are taken up by court. There's ideally not really you cannot negotiate these, but in reality, the most common kind of disputes that are negotiated are commercial disputes or like land related disputes. So these sort of disputes are usually negotiated. Okay, moving forward with the presentation. So I'll just walk you through the different stages of negotiation. So there are many stages, but I have divided into 3 broad categories. The first is preparation stage. This happens before the negotiation. The second is the during the negotiation stage. And the third is the follow-up stage. So in the first stage, which is the preparation stage, it's a really important stage because you go for an exam or wherever you go, you should always be prepared for it. In the same way, you should always be prepared before you enter any negotiation. And there are some common things which you need to keep in mind when you are preparing. Firstly, you need to think of how the negotiation process will unfold. You need to think of what might the other person or the opposite party say. You also need to think of how they will react or respond to any suggestions or any, suggestions or any proposals that you have. And you might also need to think of what are the objections they can raise if you have any of these suggestions. And how are you going to respond to those objections? And most importantly, what will you do if the process does not go your way? So knowing the answer to these questions will help you tweak your mindset and your strategies before any negotiation. The second stage, which is during the negotiation, that will form the bulk of our presentation. I'll be addressing it in the future slides. And the last is the follow-up stage, which is what happens after a negotiation. So if the negotiation is successful, then the deal might be closed. and then all the formalities related to closing and execution of the contract. So these are some follow-up steps which are taken. More information about the follow-up steps is there in the CDN course of Law Octopus Law School. So coming on to the part which is about the during the negotiation stage, what happens in it? I'm coming to it, the basic rules of negotiation, yes. So all negotiations, there might be very different forms of it. There might be different varieties of it. And but the main common elements and features that are there in any negotiation, they are given here in this slide. So the first one is the interests of the parties. Now, all parties which come before a negotiating table, they have their own interests and needs which they want to be met, which is why they are here on the table so that they can discuss. Now, what a negotiator should do is understand what are the individual interests of each parties, what are the common interests of every party, and understand out of these interests, which are the ones which are fundamental, which are absolutely non-negotiable. Like these interests have to be met under any circumstances. And the negotiator should make sure that these fundamental interests are met and prioritize them over the other interests. So this is what should be done in any negotiation, which is keep the interests of parties in mind. Okay, so before I move on to the next one, Akansha, are there any questions for me in the Q&A box?
Yes, Shakshi. So we can address a few right now.
Okay.
So Yashi is asking, does the negotiation also include the need to please?
Yes, we will come to it. This is one of the techniques involved. I'll come to this later in the given slides.
All right. In fact, that just reminded me of a phrase that it's always said that the best negotiation is when both parties are equally dissatisfied.
Yes,
So,
definitely. Either
right.
they're equally satisfied or equally dissatisfied. It's a win-win either way.
Yes. Anyway, so next question is we have from Sangram. How do you reach an out-of-court settlement? I think you already addressed that, Shreyanshi.
Yes.
Then Antara is asking, what are the steps to a successful negotiation?
Okay, so it really depends upon the sort of negotiation you're having. But if you keep some basic policies in mind, if you keep some basic techniques in mind, you can have a successful negotiation anytime. And whatever I'm going to be showing you right now, they will ensure you will have a successful negotiation. So I think that is how I would like to answer the question.
Yeah, that's actually very simply put. And I hope your answer is, I hope your query is resolved, Antara. Then we have somebody is asking, I don't know the name. So I would really request you to change your name so that I can address you with your first name. What does the third point mean, the observer one in the previous slide?
In this slide, merely to, okay, so you can be there present as an observer in the negotiation. You're just there sitting while the client is doing most of the work and you're observing how the proceedings are going on. You can be there as a witness to sign the document at the end of it, whatever. So you can just be a person who's observing the proceedings and later you can talk to the client about it. But more often than not, lawyers are the ones who usually lead the negotiations. The client does prefer if the lawyer leads the negotiation in most cases.
Okay. We'll just take up one last question, Shreyanshi, and then we can move ahead.
Yes.
Can you differentiate between negotiation and conciliation?
Okay, so negotiation and conciliation is a court mandated procedure, usually as per the, like a lot of conciliations, they happen as per a mandate of the court. A negotiation is something parties usually agree to within their agreements that, okay, before we take it up to court, before we invoke the dispute resolution clause of any agreement, it's just better to have a conversation amongst ourselves and try to resolve any issue. So a negotiation is not necessarily court mandated all the time. I think this is a very basic difference, and for the purpose of this seminar where everybody is a basic learner, I think we can stick to this definition.
All right. Okay, thanks, Shreyanshi. We can move ahead now.
Okay. Someone wanted to see the slide to the stage of negotiation. So I have put it here for a bit, but we'll have to move on. So I hope that's okay if we move on. All right. So the next element or the feature that is necessary to be kept in mind as a basic feature of any negotiation is the relationship between parties. So as there was a question raised that you have to be nice to the parties. Yes, you have to be nice to the parties. You have to maintain a healthy relationship with them, even if the negotiation does not go in your favor, because the world is really small. You never know, like especially a legal circle, anybody can be your client the other day if today they're not your client. So it's always important to maintain a good relationship. It's always important to be on good terms with them and not make enemies out of anyone in the process. In the next element or feature of negotiation is options for resolution, which is that parties, like I said before, they have their negotiable and non-negotiable interests and demands, which are to be met. But what if these demands are not met? So alternative options should be considered to these interests so that parties do not walk away empty-handed. There should be like some sort of alternative, available to every party, which they can think of during the process, so that if things don't go their way, they have something that, okay, if I didn't get this, I can get that at least, and that's good enough. Then the next element or the feature is approaches or styles of negotiation. So there are different styles to negotiate, but these are the broad categories under which I could say that this is the style. The first is the collaborative style, which, as the name suggests, is a very cooperative approach. It's an approach where both parties, or many parties in the negotiation, they agree to collaborate and cooperate with each other in order to reach a settlement. So this ensures that that agreement that is being developed, that is mutually beneficial, it works out for the both of them. And since both parties are being nice to each other and both parties have realized that, okay, we are cooperating, they share information a lot more flexibly, they try to communicate better, and as in the process a lot of value is generated in the process, and this also helps in improving their long-term relationship. So basically all parties are happy, it's a win-win outcome for everyone. Now, a lot of people might feel that since it's a collaborative procedure where everyone's cooperating, it might just happen that my needs don't get met because I'm being nice to the other person. But what happens is that when you play nice, it's just human tendency that the other person, unless they're not nice humans, they'll also play nice and they'll also want to do right by you because you're doing right by them. So it's a very common it's just a simple psychological hack. You be nice, the other person will also be nice to you. And this is how it plays out in reality. Now, in a competition, if you're being collaborative and you're worried that, okay, the opposite team, since they are not, they are not letting me win most of my points, what if they win? The judges notice when the negotiation is not getting collaborative and they do not favor that very well. So the team which is being collaborative, they get more points for it. So it's always important to have that approach where you also want to keep the other person happy. Now, coming to the other style of it, which is the adversarial style. As the name suggests, parties here are pitted in different positions. They are sort of like enemies of each other, where one side is sticking to their position and the other side is sticking to their position. And each of them are focused on claiming the benefit for themselves and not trying to do right by each other. They just want benefits for themselves. And the focus is that, okay, I should be walking out with the most here. So it may seem like a good strategy in the short term, but in the long term, it's a losing strategy because one's a winner, one's a loser, and this destroys the chance of any long-term relationship between the parties. So one example is, suppose if you go to buy a second-hand car and you haggle with the service person to give you a really cheap price for the car, and it's a long bargaining process, and at the end of the day, you get the price for a really cheap rate. But the seller is so irritated with you, he is not going to give you maintenance or any services now because you've taken the price at the car at a really cheap rate. So you may feel that, okay, I got the car for a really cheap price, but in a longer term, since it's a second-hand car, you would need maintenance. You are not getting maintenance for it because the seller is not very happy to throw that in for you. Now, if you had agreed to the price the seller was quoting, the seller would have you could have told him that, okay, since I'm agreeing to the price you want, how about you throw in this service for me, how about you give me free car seats also, and the seller would be happy to do it because his demands are also met. So that is how adversarial negotiation is different from a collaborative negotiation. And in a and in a competition or any real life negotiation, if you feel that the negotiation is becoming very adversarial, what you can do is try to shift it to make it a more collaborative one. You can try to show the other party that this is what the benefit is of making this a collaborative negotiation where we can work together to come to a solution which benefits us both. Okay, so before I move to the next slide, are there any questions for me, Akansha?
We can take up a few, Shangshi. So there's a question coming. In crimes like attempt to murder, will negotiation work?
Not really, no. I mean, there is something called plea bargaining. It's under IPC where you can, try for a reduction of a sentence or something, but that's a really technical criminal law aspect, which we won't be addressing in the course of this webinar. So, but you cannot really set with the person you have tried murdering and be like, hey, don't put charges against me. That's not really possible.
Right. And there's no settlement in criminal matters. So
Yes.
it doesn't work like that. Okay, then one last question let's take up, Shanshi. Is window dressing required to be a good negotiator?
Can you explain what window dressing is?
You can probably write on the chat, on the question Q&A box only. If you could just ask a specific and elaborative question, we'll address it. So meanwhile, we can just, does collaborative negotiations work in today's world?
Yes, of course. I mean, internationally, collaborative negotiations are the way to go. And, that is what is preferred as a standard where people are cooperating with each other, because that is it's a very efficient process. An adversarial one just makes things really sour, and, it really destroys the chance of a long-term relationship. So parties always usually prefer a collaborative style of negotiation. And clients are also okay with the collaborative style usually. Like, that is something you as a lawyer have to discuss with your client, that okay, this is the style I will be following, and the client also usually sees the benefit that it's just better to be nicer while doing things instead of playing hardball on all the times. So of course these things just come with practice, and the more you practice negotiating, the more you get better at it. Okay.
So our learner has just tried to explain window dressing. It's like being manipulative, pretending what you're not. So does it help in negotiation?
You have to do it smartly. I mean, all of us do a fair bit of manipulation in the processes. A lot of people try to give out information strategically, that this is where this information is going to be given out, this is where it won't be. So yeah, I mean, you just have to be really smart about it. But if you get caught, it could reflect really badly on you. So it's all a matter of being smart about it.
Okay, thank you, Shranshi. We can move ahead.
Yeah. Coming to the next style of negotiation, next element of negotiation, the negotiation strategies. So there are some basic strategies one must keep in mind before or during any negotiation. The first one is BATNA, or best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Basically, what a BATNA is, it's the answer to the question that if this negotiation is not working out, then what is my best outside option? So again, this is not the same as alternative options during a negotiation. This is if the negotiation itself does not work out, then what do I do? In the options for resolution, we discuss the alternative options one might have during the negotiation process. But in BATNA, what one needs to consider, that if this negotiation is not going my way, then what do I do? Should I go to court? Should I follow some other procedure? Do we just walk away empty-handed? So people should, BATNA is the best alternative one has outside of the negotiation procedure. Where BATNA helps is, it helps you anticipate situations where alternatives may be required, and so you can prepare your strategy accordingly. So how do you understand what your BATNA is? You make a list of the actions you might take if the agreement is not reached. You see what are the most promising ideas and you convert them into actionable things, or something that practical solutions, something that can be worked out. And then out of those, you select the option which seems the best. Now, this is a very simple cheat sheet to understand what your BATNA is. Obviously, a complex situation will require a greater consideration of factors and possibilities. And while you're considering what your own BATNA is, you should also consider what alternatives are available to the opposite party. The more you can preempt what their BATNA could be, the better prepared you will be for the negotiation. I'm just going to give an example of what BATNA is to make things a little clearer. Suppose you're going in for a job interview with company X, and you already have a job offer from company Y. So during your salary negotiation with company X, if things do not go that your way, you know that you have a job offer with company Y to fall back on. So the job offer from company Y is your BATNA in response to your negotiation with company X. It is the best option which is available to you outside of the negotiation you have with company X. So that is how, that is a very simple way to explain BATNA. And how you can understand the opposite party's BATNA is basically you ask them questions, and if it's a legal issue, you research in prior, you research before the negotiation to understand that, okay, this is what they could do if things do not go their way. It's all a way to make you better prepared. Coming to the next slide. Yeah. The next strategy is Vatna, which is worst alternative to a negotiated agreement. It's basically the worst result a party could achieve if the negotiation process fails or does not go their way. So another example, you've gone in for a job interview and you are unemployed. You don't have a job with you right now. And I mean, the person, the interviewer is offering you a salary of 10,000 per month. So taking that salary of 10,000 per month, that seems like a better deal than being unemployed and not having any income for that month. Even though 10,000 may not be a great amount, but it is still better than nothing. So that offer is the Vatna. That is your worst alternative that you could have in any situation. So sometimes, like, which is what is explained in this slide, that it may happen that the deal on the table, it's not acceptable to you, but it's better than the worst position that you are in. Like that taking that 10,000 rupees is still better than being unemployed. So you are minimizing your losses and you're making a best out of a bad situation. That is what understanding or knowing what your Vatna is. And Vatna and Vatna, these are the benchmarks against which you can see that any offer that is being made during a negotiation, if they're good for you or not. So Vatna is like, okay, one end of the spectrum and Vatna is the other end of the spectrum. Against these two benchmarks, you need to see if these options are workable or not. So moving on to the next strategy, knowing the walkaway point or the price or the reservation point. So this basically means that at what point in the negotiation will you walk away from this? At what point is the negotiation or the deal that is being suggested to you is not a good deal anymore? So another example, you've gone for a job interview and you've decided that you will take a salary of anywhere between, you will not take a salary which is less than 60,000. If you take anything lesser than that, you will not be able to survive. But the job interviewer is not willing to pay you more than 60,000. So that is when you realize that, but the job interview is not being able to pay you more than 50,000. So now that you realize that, okay, this negotiation is not working out, this person's not paying me more than 50,000 and I need 60,000. So that is when you will walk away from the negotiation, because otherwise you'll have to settle for less and okay, that's not a very good deal for you. And suppose if you've gone to buy a car, let's say, and you have only 5 lakhs to spend, you cannot spend more than 5 lakhs. But the car dealer is not going to sell to you car at anything lesser than 7 lakhs. But you have only 5 lakhs to give. So that is when you walk away from the negotiation. So that is the walk away point or the price or the reservation price. Now you must be thinking, what is the difference between a Vatna and a walk away point? So Vatna and walk away point, these things happen at different stages of the negotiation. The Vatna, it's essentially a backup plan in case the negotiation does not work out at all. If you're not able to reach any solution during a negotiated agreement, that is when your Vatna comes into play. But a walkaway point, that comes when you reach a certain stage during the negotiation. Once this stage is arrived in a negotiation and you see that, okay, you are not able to accept the offer that is given, you walk away from the negotiation and then you pursue the Vatna. So the walkaway point might come before the Vatna in a lot of situations. So that is the difference. Akansha, are there any questions for me in the Q&A box?
We can take up a couple,
Okay.
if it's matching our structure and pace.
Right.
So it's actually quite interesting question. Does negotiation always have to be a win-win?
I mean, if you want to have a future long-term relationship with the party, then it's better if it's a win-win. But if you don't really want to have a future relationship or a long-term relationship with that party, and you really don't care about what the other person feels, then it's okay if it's a win-loss. Usually win-win outcome is preferred when you want to have a long-term dealing with them.
Okay, just last question. So Jacinto is asking, any prior framework is given by the clients for negotiations within which the negotiations work?
It depends. Again, it depends on the conversation you have with the client. The clients may give you a prior framework. Some clients may tell you, okay, you do whatever you want. I trust you completely. Just keep me posted. It really depends upon the conversation with the client that you have with your client and how they want you to lead the negotiation, which is why it's important to identify the role you'll be playing in it. And to do that, you need to talk to your client about it. They'll tell you.
Okay, great. I think we can move ahead.
Okay. Moving ahead, then the next strategy is the zone of possible agreement. So, or the ZOPA, which is basically a common ground that both negotiating parties may reach after compromising and striking a deal. So suppose you go into a job interview and you want a salary anywhere between 60 to 80,000. and the interviewer is only willing to give a salary between 70 to 80,000. So the zone of possible agreement between the two of you will be 70 to 80,000. A common ground where both parties are going to be happy and both parties are satisfied with the outcome of it. So I mean, how you analyze what the ZOPA could be is by understanding what your interests are and what the other party's interest would be. And I mean, if you want to have a solution which is better than an impasse or a deadlock, it's better to identify what that zone of possible agreement could be, and you should try to reach that. So coming to what an impasse or a deadlock is, it's basically when both parties are unable to reach any agreement, then they become in deadlock. They are at an impasse and they are at a point from where they cannot proceed any further. And why this impasse happens is because both parties are overtly in conflict with each other. Both parties do not want to work on any solutions and they're very stuck to their positions. And they're considering their own perspective. Both parties are not creative enough to think of any options that might suit them. And an impasse or a deadlock is really harmful because there is no progress, there is no settlement. And that leads to a lose-lose outcome because both parties don't get what they want. But an impasse can also be a good opportunity because it can help you, solve problems and think of creative solutions to get out of the entire stagnancy you are in. And how do you overcome that impasse in a negotiation? The most simple thing to do is ask the other person a question that what would you do if you were me? What would you do if you were in my shoes? So that person will be able to understand things from your perspective. Then they can, it's like you both are sitting on the same side of the table and you're imagining a shared goal, a shared outcome that you want to achieve out of this. Then the other person will also think of solutions and they will work with you so that you guys so that both of you have options that you have never considered previously, and that can help in breaking an impasse or a deadlock. I mean, it's sounding really simple right now when I'm saying it, but sometimes these impasses or deadlocks can get really serious and it takes many rounds of negotiations to break one. Akansha, before I move on to the next part of the presentation, are there any questions?
What we can do is we have a question related to ZOPA, so let's just address that.
Yeah.
Can ZOPA be considered a collaborative approach?
Of course, definitely. Like reaching the ZOPA is a collaborative approach because both of you are sitting and thinking together that, okay, this is where I can meet you. The other person is like, okay, this is where I can meet you. And both of you will meet in the middle somewhere. So you both are cooperative and collaborating to meet in the middle.
Okay. Also, wouldn't deadlock lead to walking away? Somebody is asking.
Yes, definitely. It happens in a lot of times when people do not want to reach any settlement and they're more than happy with a deadlock, they often walk away. So then people either pursue their partners, or if they don't have a partner, then they have to pursue their partner. So it's always better to try to break out of that deadlock so that the negotiation works out if that is your best alternative. Otherwise, yeah, you can obviously pursue options outside the negotiation.
Okay, great. Also, learners, there are as many questions as we're able to address, we will. Whatever is remaining, we'll address. Out of that also, we'll try to address the most during the end of the session. So since we have, due to paucity of time, if your answer is not addressed, I have a solution for that as well. So don't worry, and we'll try to address as many as we can. Yes, Shanshi.
Okay, thanks, Akansha. So coming to the next part of the presentation, which is the mindset you require to be a good negotiator. So the first thing you should always keep in mind is the negotiation should be goal oriented. You must have clarity in, okay, this is what the negotiation is for. This is the purpose of it. And this is what we hope to achieve out of this process. Once you know that, okay, this is what we want out of a negotiation, your strategies and your mindset will be prepared accordingly. The next thing that you need to keep in mind is you need to separate the people from the problem. So the problem is not the person who is negotiating against you. The problem is the problem itself. You should try to work with the person opposite you to fix the problem instead of making the person your enemy. Because negotiators, they're also people like you. They're also humans like you. They have emotions and they have their, own obligations and duties that they need to fulfill for their clients, and they also have their limitations. So it also helps in putting yourself in their shoes and understanding their context and where they are coming from, so that you're able to understand their perspective better to help your case in some way. So once you address their concerns, it will also help you address your concerns, because if you see from things from their perspective, you realize that, okay, so this is what may be stopping them, this is why they are acting the way they are. It will help you change your actions and strategies accordingly, and both of you can arrive at a solution which is working well for the two of you. So you should always separate the people from the problem. Then you need to focus on the interests of the person, of the people, and not the positions. So it may so happen that people on the opposite sides of table, they have completely different opinions and positions on certain things. What is more important is to not focus on the position itself, but look at what they want and look at what I want. Once I know what, so once we focus on the part, what we want, instead of, okay, this is what our position is, it will help us to shift our focus on something that is more constructive and productive. It's very inefficient to argue over, okay, the sky is blue, the sky is pink, but what you both want is the sky to rain. So I'm giving a very silly example, but it's just more important to understand what your interest is and try to figure out that instead of arguing over positions. So how do you find out what the interest of the other party is? It's really simple. You just ask them. And the more you ask them questions, the better you will know. And they will also feel that you're very interested in them. So you ask them things like, why do you want to do this? Why are you suggesting the things you are suggesting? What is stopping you? Why are you not considering what I am putting forth? And the answer to those questions will give you a peek into their mindset, will give you a peek into their perspective and help you understand that, okay, this is where they are coming from. And that will help you answer their concerns better. You can identify interests that you both share. Both of you may want the same thing and you don't even realize it. So the more you talk and ask about it, you may come across a solution that, okay, this is what the both of us want, let's work towards it. Then you can also use a technique called design thinking, which is basically focusing on their interest and playing nice, being nice. That, okay, look, I'm appreciating your interest. I am trying to solve a problem for you. I'm trying to take care of your concerns. And once they see that you are putting in that effort for them, they will also want to reciprocate if they're nice people and if they're in that mindset to collaborate. So these are the ways. So all these strategies that I'm giving are more attuned towards a collaborative negotiation, because that is what is the standard practice usually. And that is what people usually do follow in commercial transactions or in competitions especially. So how you try to do that is, you just sort of, it's as simple as trying to play nice. And this is how it works in reality also. In reality, you get what you want better if you don't make enemies out of the person. So this is what design thinking also is essentially. The next thing that you need to keep in mind is generate options for mutual gain. So you may think that, okay, this is all, you have that mindset that, but there might be more to it than what you think. You can even expand the possibilities of that negotiation and try to get more out of it than what both of you possibly imagined. So suppose, let's say a car company is taking over a car tire company, and things could be hostile, and the process could be fixed with a lot of could be filled with a lot of hostilities and a lot of reservations. But instead of maybe just focusing on the fact that, hey, I'm taking over a tire company, the car company is also taking over the goodwill that the tire company has with the customers, the trust the customers have on, okay, how good the tires are. So these are some other benefits which the car company possibly didn't even think of when they were buying the tire company. And the tire company could also be getting the benefit that, okay, I'm going to be associated with this big car brand and I will have this one very trusted brand which a lot of customers use. So things like brand value, things like goodwill, these are also there which help in mutual gain, other than the bare commercial figures, of course. So if these options are not available, you can also think of inventing them and try to come up with creative solutions that both parties could be happy with. Suppose, one party, like it's happened in a lot of my competitions, one party just wants an apology from the other party, like some damage has happened, all they want is a public apology, and that is something which is not given in the problem. But once you ask questions about it, then you realize that, oh, they're hurt, they possibly want a public apology also. Okay, that's not very hard for me to do, let's give that to them. So these are some ways where you can think that, okay, I am doing something for them and I'm getting something in return. So you can think of options which can help you both in some way. The simple thing is, and you can also present them with options that are that are not going to be very difficult for them to take up and follow up on. The basic principle here is that you solve problems together and you find a way to make everyone happier. Akansha, before I move on to the next slide, are there any questions?
Okay, Shangshi. So one question we can take up is, it's a very common question. What to do if the whole negotiation doesn't work out, if the client backs out, or if somebody backs out, does it lead to termination?
It depends on the contract now. Like, I mean, so if it's a negotiation relating to the contract, so a contract may not be, formulated, and then later on the deal might not come through if one person backs out. So negotiations can happen even before a contract is being formed. Negotiations can happen after the contract is formed, and there could be a dispute, which is why a negotiation is happening. So a negotiation can happen at different stages of any transaction, before or after. So it really depends upon the context in which the negotiation is happening. If you know the context, then the outcome will also be known depending on that context.
Okay. So that will only decide whether it's binding or non-binding.
Yeah, it really depends on the context. So if the negotiation is happening before a contract is about to be signed, before a contract is about to be, completely finalized, and okay, people are going to execute it. So if one person backs out, then yeah, the negotiations have fallen through, and then the contract will not be happening. Suppose if the negotiation is happening after the dispute has happened, after a contract has been breached, and the parties choose to settle it through negotiation. So if one party backs out, then the outcome which is written in the contract, that okay, if the negotiations don't work out, then what do the parties do, then that outcome will be taken. So it really depends upon the situation in which the negotiation is happening.
Great. Mostly, I think it will then go to the dispute resolution mechanism or to the court, whichever is decided. Okay, let's quickly address 2-3 questions from BATNA and VATNA as well. So is BATNA part of that particular, in VATNA, it is adversarial negotiation in which there is win-lose situation?
Not really. Like, I mean, the VATNA is a strategy. It doesn't happen. It can happen in either a collaborative negotiation. It can happen in an adversarial negotiation also. It's a strategy that you need to keep in mind before you enter a negotiation. You need to know that what is my worst possible outcome if this negotiation does not work out. So suppose if the negotiation doesn't work out, the worst possible outcome that is available to you is you will have to go to court, which would mean a lot of time being wasted, which means a lot of money being wasted. So that could be a VATNA for a lot of people. So it can happen in any type of negotiation. It's a strategy. It's not really, it can happen in any form of negotiation.
Okay, just one more question. So Gitanjali is asking, does BATNA lead to a win-lose outcome? Like the outcome can result in our favor?
Can. I mean, it really depends upon how the negotiation's going. So, I mean, the question, I'm not sure if it's framed very clearly, but suppose if I've understood correctly, it could happen that, okay, the negotiation's not worked out, then you go pursue your BATNA. And your BATNA is actually, like, since it's the best alternative, you ultimately end up maybe being a winner in the situation because you have pursued the alternative which is the best for you. So you do get something which is maybe not the best as negotiating, but you do get something out of it. So you could be at the winner at the end of it.
Okay. And what if our walkaway point is our BATNA?
I mean, the walkaway point that can happen, but usually the BATNA is an option which is outside the negotiation. I mean, once you realize your walkaway point has been reached, then you leave the negotiation and you go pursue the BATNA. That is how they can be, like, that is how the process works. I mean, these are just basic things which we all follow subconsciously. We have all followed subconsciously while negotiation. I'm just putting names to them, and like these techniques are like named this way, which is why they seem like confusing concepts. But these are actually very common techniques we all follow in our daily life. That, like, suppose if we've gone shopping and we see a dress we like, and we don't want to spend more than 500 rupees on it, but the shopkeeper is not giving us anything less than anything, he's not giving it to us in 500 rupees. So we walk away from the shop and we go to another shop and we buy another dress for 500 rupees. So that's our BATNA. Like, these are and our walkaway point was that 500 rupees in that shopkeeper didn't agree to it. So these are such very simple things we follow in our daily life. Since it's a name is being put to it, which is why it's sounding confusing, but they're actually very simple concepts when you look at them in the context of daily examples.
Okay, great. Thanks, Shangshi, for simplifying this. I think we can address the rest of them at the subsequent hour of the session.
Okay, I'll move on to the next part of the presentation. So these are some interesting techniques you can try during a negotiation, depending upon how the negotiation is going. It's not necessary these techniques have to be tried all the time. It really depends on the context. So the first one is the nibble technique. It's a fancy name given to something very simple as You can't, if you don't ask for something, you will not get it. So if you've reached a general agreement with the opposite party on the important issues, you can try asking them for smaller things which they don't mind throwing in, because you've already agreed to the bigger things. And in their eagerness to reach an agreement, they might be willing to, quickly agree to the smaller things. So I'm going to give a very simple example. Suppose you've booked a flight ticket, you go to the airport and the air hostess tells you that, okay, the flight is overbooked, we'll have to cancel your booking and we might have to shift your booking to the next day. So, and we're also going to give you a 500 rupees credit voucher because of the trouble you faced. So you might just take the 500 rupee voucher and walk away. Or you can always ask the airline people that, since I'm facing a lot of trouble because I am willing to take the next flight and not take this flight, how about you give me some free air miles? How about you give me some free meal? How about you throw in a free night at a hotel? Or maybe you bump me up from economy to business class. And these things may not be such a big deal for the airline, because if they have caused the trouble of inconveniencing you in some way, so throwing these small things as a free meal or not is really not a big deal for them. So they might give you these smaller things because you have agreed to the big thing, which is taking the flight the next day and not taking the overbooked flight. So this is a technique you can try in a negotiation. Another one is anchoring, which is basically the effect of a first offer in a negotiation in setting the bar for the price. For example, you've gone in for a job interview and you want to have a salary of 80,000, but the HR is thinking that she does not want to pay more than 70,000. So you go there and like during the interview, you are the first one to say that you want 80,000. Then the HR will be like, okay, she has started with an 80,000 benchmark, so that is what she's expecting. And she might try to say that, okay, we can try to give you a 75,000 maybe, as opposed to maybe she was thinking that she'll give a 70,000. So the effect of you putting in a higher offer that has on a negotiation, that is what anchoring is. Then the next technique is a disarming or a tactical empathy. It's a very fancy way of saying that you have to be nice. You be nice to the other party. You be really nice to them and they'll be like, okay, wow, she's being so nice to me. Let me also be nice to her. You show them that you're empathetic. You show that you understand their concerns, and you show that you get where they're coming from. So they'll also be nice to you if they feel that you are also being nice to them. So yeah, like these are some techniques you can try in the course of any negotiation, depending on how they're going. Coming to the next slide, which is the skills one requires to be a good negotiator. So if you are a lawyer who's negotiating a commercial agreement or a commercial transaction, it's very important that you have technical skills. And what these technical skills include is a complete understanding of the law, understanding that what is enforceable or not, what solution will be workable or not, and discussion on the clauses. Like there are some standard clauses in every contract. If the other person is trying to change them, if that is something that's acceptable or not. You also need to understand the business and commercial needs of the parties and see if it's financially viable for them. You need to talk to your client to understand what their expectations are and even make known to them that this is what they should expect. The client should always get a reality check from you about how a negotiation should go. It is your job and responsibility to make sure that the client knows that even if they are expecting a certain outcome, this is how things might pan out. You also have to guide the client on how they can mitigate and avoid certain risks, especially after a negotiation if it's not gone in their favor. You need to tell clients that, okay, this is what they need to follow in order to make the process simpler for them. And yes, you need to manage their expectations during the negotiation, which is all a part of communication. Now, other than technical skills, it's really important to have soft skills also. The most important being active listening. That is, you need to be a better listener than you need to be a better talker. It always helps to listen more and talk less. That is how you hear what the other person is saying truly and understand what they're saying and where they're coming from and what's hidden in what they're saying. I'm going to give an example of what happened to me in a competition. So my teammate and I, the opposite team, was talking over us constantly, and they were making points and they were making brilliant points. But we weren't really talking much because we were just listening to what they had to say. And we thought we might be losing the round because we're not really speaking much. We're just listening and responding when appropriate. But turns out we won the round at the end because the judge was impressed that we spent more time listening and saying things which were relevant instead of saying things which were not very relevant. So it always helps to be a better listener than a better talker. And when you're talking, You need to talk the right things. You need to ask the right questions. You need to say things which are relevant. And you need to be really quick on your feet. Even though you go in with all this preparation, you need to be really adaptable to how the proceedings are happening, and you need to be quick on your feet. And all of these things form a part of your basic communication skills as to how you convey certain things and how you deliver them. Then you need to be assertive about your points, but at the same time be empathetic about the other person. You need to be considerate of what their needs also are, but at the same time stand your ground also. You need to be collaborative. Like, you can let loose also, be collaborative, but at the same time you also should have the ability to say no when when there is something which is absolutely not in your favor and you cannot go against it. And most importantly, you need to be patient throughout the process. Negotiations go on for a really long time. So it's really important to be patient throughout the procedure and wait for the outcomes to happen. So before I go to the next part, Akansha, are there any questions for me?
Okay. So somebody is asking how to decide. So let's go back a little bit. There's just a little recap. How to decide whether to do collaborative negotiation or an adversarial negotiation.
It's always better to, you go in there, you gauge how the parties are, you talk to them a little. A lot of depends upon, you make small talk at first, and then you try to gauge the mood they're in, gauge the sort of mentality they're in. If you feel that there's a lot of resistance to your ideas and you feel it's going to be a difficult negotiation, then you change your strategy accordingly. It's always better. And if you feel that this party is really not willing to cooperate with you and they're very stuck to an adversarial point, you try to make them see the benefit of being nice to each other. But if that's not working out, then yeah, you can also, it really depends on the situation, and that's a call you and your client have to take up, that should you play dirty or not, should you also follow their tactics or not, and if a long-term relationship matters with them or not. So a lot of factors need to be considered before you decide the style that you will follow. The most important being how important is the other person's needs and interests for you, and how important is a future relationship with them for you.
Okay. Thanks, Shangshi. And could you also, so Shraddha wants to know, could you just tell us as to how negotiation works in IPR related disputes?
I am unfortunately not very aware about it, how things are related to that, but we will definitely, I can research that and get back to you on it.
Also, I think these skills are very general skills which will work for all sorts of disputes, as well as obviously depending on the stages. But it's something like, I always give this example that what we are learning here is like, for example, if you're swimming, you're learning how to swim. So you can customize it to swim in a particular, in an ocean or in a pool or in a sea. So it's like the skills that we are learning. It's the basic tricks and techniques that we are learning. So once you gauge over that, you can customize it and apply it in all on all areas of law as well, right?
Definitely. Yeah, these are some very basic techniques and skills I'm trying to tell you all, which you can use just to get a basic. Since it's our webinar, I cannot unfortunately cover everything there is there related to negotiations. I'm just sticking to the basics. Once you know these, you can take it forward and make the best out of this knowledge.
Yes, just repeat the anchoring technique once again, Shreyanshi, and then we can just move ahead, because Pritika had missed out on it.
Okay, I'll just come back to it. Okay. So the anchoring technique is basically the effect that the first offer in the negotiation has in setting the bar of the price. So suppose I gave the example of a job interview. Suppose you go into a job interview and you want a salary of 80,000, but the HR is thinking that she cannot offer more than 70,000, but she's willing to see that, okay, let me just talk and see what the candidate wants. And when you make the offer that, okay, this is the salary that you want 80,000, the HR might think that, okay, she wants 80,000, maybe I can increase it to a 75 because she's a good candidate. So the effect that your offer of 80,000 has in setting the bar from the negotiation, you cannot obviously quote some ridiculous price, like you want a 2 lakh salary for like a very for a job which will not usually pay you that amount. But if you set a reasonable offer, which is a little higher, more attuned to what you want, then the effect that has in the negotiation, that technique is called the anchoring technique. I hope that's clear. If that is, can I move on to the next part of it?
Yes, Shangshi, you can move ahead.
Okay. So just to summarize the discussion we've had so far, some basic tips to ace negotiations in competitions and daily life. Like, this is a summary of everything we've learned so far. You should understand the issues and your client's interests, prioritize your client's interests. Understand what the other party's interest is also. Think of creative solutions which could be beneficial for everyone involved. You should know what the fact situation is, what the problem is, and most importantly, you need to know the instructions of your client well. Once you've had that conversation, it's important to know what they want very well and know your BATNA, VATNA, and all of that prior to the negotiation. Then it comes to the presentation, where when during negotiation, especially in competitions, do not let one person dominate the negotiation, since you will be negotiating as a team. Both team members should be contributing equally. Even though you've split the role amongst yourself, that one person will be playing the client, one person will be playing the lawyer, both of you should be prepared to speak at any amount of time. And you should not contradict your team members, that's really important, or speak over them. You should not even speak over the counterparties to make your point. Don't raise your voice. Be nice, greet the other side, introduce yourselves, introduce who you are representing. Be professional at all times. Even if the opposite side is your best friend or enemy, be professional and use appropriate language. Your tone should always be neutral and confident. Be polite. Do not be aggressive or use unparliamentary or inappropriate language. And it's really important to, of course, dress for success also, because looks do matter sometimes. Then during negotiations, you should be able to communicate your party's interests and goals properly. You should be able to ask what the other party, their agenda is, and what they hope to achieve out of this process. See what the differences are and see if those differences can be, bridged in some way. Try to prioritize the non-negotiables during the negotiation. Take short breaks or timeouts. These short breaks really help in, taking a step back and analyzing the situation and, reframing your strategies. If a particular issue is dragging on, consider moving on from it and revisiting it later. Both parties, if there is any proposal being put forward, both parties should be really clear about what it is. They should have the details. And always, always, always remember to have detailed discussions on any proposed agreement. Like, it's very important you dive into the details of any offers or any proposal the other parties make. If there are any qualifications for it, if there is anything that you have to do to meet them, like, it's very important to know the details of any deal you get into. If the other parties made some concessions, don't forget to thank them. Be open to suggestions that are put before you. Don't judge them. Be a good listener. Try to be open to suggestions and, see if they work for you. But all this at the same time, also remember your walkaway point and balance that with managing any client expectations. Don't forget to summarize. Summarizing is really important, especially in competitions, that you summarize the discussion so that both parties know if you're on the same page, both parties have understood if you're on the same page or not. And lastly, like, always end of the discussion on a positive note, even if it fails. Like, you can always suggest a potential future negotiation to build on the current discussion. So this is all I have for now. Now over to Akansha for any questions.
Hi, thank you so much, Shreyanshi. That was so many complicated concepts, well put in such less time and summarized for all of us. Understand that it's a very short period of time. An hour-long webinar will not teach you completely everything, all the skills that are required for a negotiation. Also, I could see a lot of you having, really interesting questions, and you wish to know so much more about negotiation and the skills and BATNA and everything else. And during the last 5 minutes also, we'll be addressing many more questions. But just before that, as I had promised to all of you, that if you wish to know more and if you're very interested to actually gauge on the skills of negotiation, and also the fact that we will not be able to cover so much, it was all constricted. So I would like to bring to your attention about one of the most popular and very well rated course that Loctopus has to offer, as Shreyanshi also mentioned in the middle, that can help you maybe. So I will just share my screen and show you a little. If this is of no interest to you, you may leave the webinar also. That is also okay. But if you are interested to know about it and how this can help you, then I will just quickly run through what this course is about. It's a very recent and very recently modified course. In fact, we've worked towards the negotiation module also very recently. So this is the contract drafting and negotiation course that we are starting from October 1st as well. Now, why would you do such course? As all of you had such brilliant and interesting questions with respect to the negotiation webinar as well. So drafting, reviewing, and negotiating contracts. Now, negotiation is a very, very important stage in contract drafting as well. So these are skills that any lawyer has to or should entail. Hence, negotiation skills actually decide what the substance of your contract is going to be and how much of it is going to land in the court, right? So understanding contract drafting, not just negotiation, but also drafting from a practical point of view, is something that this course can help you with. And we at Loctopus believe in informed and inspired careers. So we would want to inform you and inspire you with the right kind of knowledge and right kind of skills so that you can start your career from day one with proper and enhanced skills. How will this be helpful to you? So as you just saw that, just a little bit of information on the process and techniques got you to thinking so much. So understanding the entire process and reading in the an entire module and actually performing and, on field negotiating amongst your peers will help you a lot more in improving your legal communication, dispute resolution skill, also analyzing the conflicts from both sides and then coming to a conclusion, what to say, what not to say, is all that this course will help you with. We have something called the contract lab and negotiation table exercise, which are very practical exercises where the learners, they negotiate a deal themselves amongst each other, and then they get personalized feedback on that. We have assignments on that regard as well. We have master classes also by industry experts, so that all sorts of techniques as well as solutions are not only just given as an overview, but actually gone into depth with, and you can have a good look at that as well. Apart from that, we don't just teach you the skills, but we make sure that these skills turn into something fruitful for you. So all the career opportunities and plan of action that are available as a draftsman, as a negotiator, is also taught to you at the end of the session. So this is why this is the way it can help you. Now, focusing on the modes of learning, how we teach you, there are so many questions as to what we can do. It's completely online. So you don't have to go anywhere. There's no physical, attendance anywhere. There are recorded videos, there are recorded lectures, and there are 8 live sessions by experts. Then there are text-based modules. There are reading resources. Shreyanshi has also, developed a reading resource in the negotiation module, very well thought through, not just which is helpful in contract drafting, but also in negotiation competitions as well. Then we have exercises, as I already mentioned. Then there is an online forum. So if you have any doubts, if there are any queries, which we're not being able to resolve today as well, they can also be addressed on an online forum. So it's called a discussion portal. And not just the faculty members, but the peers can also answer each other's questions. So that develops a lot of confidence. Then we have an assignment, a compulsory assignment, where you scrutinize and draft a contract and then receive personalized feedback depending on what you have done. So that can also help you. So if this interests you, you can go to the page and also find out more about the course. One good thing is it's very self-paced. So you don't have to, negotiation and contract drafting is a skill which has to be ensured that they are learned with your own pace, right? That is not something that you cannot have a crash course or a 1-hour webinar to know everything about it. So it's self-paced. You can take it as per your own pace, and it's time saver. Because I say that because personally speaking, if I would have gotten such a course, then I would have probably been able to save some time in my career, right? Shreyanshi, what do you think about this?
Definitely. I've done this course too as a learner before I joined Loctopus, and I thought it was a great course, which is why I joined Loctopus, so that I could develop courses like this. So it's a good course, and you should definitely consider it if you want to learn more about contract drafting and negotiation.
Yes, so I'll quickly summarize this. So you get a certificate of completion, and if you are from the top batch experts, then you get a letter of recommendation from Loctopus as well. So that's there. Now let's quickly find out what you can do. So if you want to start this journey or just explore, get to know about it, if this is for you or not, then I'll just put these two links on the chat box and you can click on it. And of course, since you have attended this webinar till the end, and you are from that special chunk of people, so then we would want to give you some benefits of that. So there's a 10% waiver in case if you want to enroll for this course. So then you can use this code CDNLLS 10. I'll put that in the chat box as well to take some discount. And if you have any other queries, then you can call our career counselor, Snigdha Ghatak. So yes, of course, if you decide to enroll for this course, then definitely use this code. And I will put these two links in the chat box so you can explore and get more information in that regard. Okay. Anyway, thank you so much. We'll quickly address few more questions, Shangshi, so that, and then we'll finish the webinar. Somebody is asking, how are negotiation, mediation, and conciliation different from each other?
Okay, that's a nice question. So mediation is a process where there's a mediator appointed with the consent of the parties. The parties decide that, okay, this is a third person we want who helps us in solving our issue. The mediator is not the one who makes the judgment for them that, okay, this is what you should be doing. The mediator guides them into a common settlement that both people are happy with. So in negotiation, parties are talking to each other without any external help. In a mediation, an external help is involved in order to help the parties achieve the same goal that they would have in a negotiation. So the principles are the same, except the entire hard work is being done by a mediator during a mediation. So that is a very basic difference. Conciliation, as I explained, under Indian law, under Section 89, you have court-mandated Section 89 of the CPC, you have the court-mandated arbitration and conciliation, which the court decides that, okay, this is how you will settle your dispute before it should reach court. So conciliations can be court mandated. Negotiation and mediation, they are entirely voluntary process. So if the parties, they want to do it, that is when they sign up for it. So that's a basic difference.
Is it necessary that every time negotiations have to be accompanied by advocates?
It depends. Sometimes clients can also negotiate with themselves. They might just have a lawyer that they'll talk to later after the negotiation. It really depends upon what the client wants and depends upon the matter.
Could you please just explain the ZOPA concept? You could just summarize in a line or so.
So the ZOPA is basically a zone of possible agreement. It is an area, a common ground, which parties both find which is satisfactory to both of them. Like, you know, how we see this phrase a lot in daily parlance, that meet me in the middle, let's reach a middle ground on this. ZOPA is nothing but the middle ground. It is a place where both parties can be happy with the outcome.
Okay, great. What do you mean by being able to say no? Won't that deviate from collaboration on common interests?
Not really. Like, that's an interesting question. So being able to say no smartly, right? I mean, just because you're being collaborative and cooperative, that doesn't mean that you give away all your interests. You have to have a balancing act. And it's a very fine balancing act. You know, you need to be able to manage your client expectations. And at the same time, you also need to be seeing that the negotiations going in the manner that you thought. So you have to balance both of them, and it only comes with practice, that being able to say no at the right time. And there are ways to say no. You have to be really polite. You can be like, okay, this is not a very workable solution for me, and this is why this is not a workable solution for me. Can you propose something else which would be more in line with this? What about this? So instead of maybe saying no, you also give alternatives to soften the blow. So these are just some things that just come with practice, and developing that balance. The more you negotiate, the better you get at it.
Okay, thanks, Shangshi, for that. Let's take up one more question. So Pooja is asking, what role does leverage play during negotiations?
I mean, leverage is everything, like how you use it smartly in a negotiation. So if you have something that the other party really wants, and you use it in a manner that you get the maximum benefit from them. So how you use it, that is a call you have to take during the negotiation, which is why adaptability is a very important soft skill. You need to be quick on your feet to know that how you can use something as a leverage in the course of the negotiation. A lot of things, like, they sound really theoretical right now, but once you do a negotiation, you'll actually be able to apply the mindset and techniques I've discussed, and you'll be able to understand what I'm saying a lot better. So since a lot of you are first time learners, I would really encourage you to do this and practice this in negotiation competitions or negotiation events in your college to understand these techniques more and get better at them.
In fact, that reminds me. So we are also going to be organizing very soon a negotiation competition, and the feedback form also that I'll be sharing with you on the chat box right now. You can let us know if you'll be interested to do this competition. We will have a proper competition, and then you can improve your skills also. So we have a lot of different things that you can explore here as well, and I will be putting the link for the feedback form here as well. Also, there's one question that Suryansh is asking, can a second year student apply for this course? Yes, of course, Suryansh, a second year student, even a first year student can apply for. We have had a lot of learners from first year and second year batch who have learned a lot from the CDN course as well. I have, there are a lot of more questions, but because of, again, as we said, that because of the paucity of time, we would not be able to address all of them. But I am hoping and looking forward to see some of you in our courses, and some of you in the competition, and some of you just generally interacting with us, so that we could make it more, engaging for all of you.
Kansha, we have 10 more minutes. We can take up some questions.
Yes. I was just saying that we could take up one more question. So Chetan is asking, I'm an alumni of this course. I wanted to know in what more ways I can further enhance my skills on negotiation. Is there any advanced course which you would suggest? So we've modified this entire course now to make it more advanced, especially in terms of negotiation. But if there's anything else, Shakshi, that you can recommend?
So there are a lot of courses and accreditations which are being offered by international organizations, is how you can be a better mediator in negotiation. If you search online, you will come across a lot of boot camps and a lot of courses which offer negotiation. So you can just search for it online. You might be able to come across them. Okay. I didn't do anything in particular. I mostly did competitions, and that is how I did by practice. So that's what happened.
Okay, so Shakshi, Dhwani is asking, as a mediator as well as mediation lawyer, how important is negotiation and what points should be kept in mind?
So can you repeat the question again, actually, please?
As a mediator or as a mediation lawyer, what are the points that should be kept in mind with respect to negotiation?
So if you're a mediator or a mediation lawyer, then you will not be the one who will be actually negotiating the discussion, if I'm right. You will be there, sitting there as an observer to the conversation and seeing how parties negotiate. So your job mediation is a totally different thing, which is not within the scope of this webinar. But just to answer your question very briefly, your role comes in as a way to make sure that the discussion is happening in a manner which is constructive and which is smooth, and parties are being able to have a discussion where they are putting forward their common interests, and you can push them towards a solution. Like what a mediator does is push the parties towards a solution, push the parties to a common ground, and then it's on the parties to take it up. The mediator asks them questions during individual sessions. The mediator does not give any suggestions or anything it just lets the party drive the course of the entire proceedings. The mediator is just there to hold their hand, but not really push them forward. He's just there to hold their hand. So that is the very subtle difference in mediation. It involves a bunch of other skills and techniques which are some are in common with negotiation, but some are very different from it also. So maybe you can have some other webinar on mediation, since a lot of you expressed interest in it.
Okay, so moving on. So sometimes does one need to juggle between both methods, which is collaborative and adversarial, and how to decide when to be collaborative and when to be adversarial?
You can juggle between both methods. Again, it really depends on the context and how the discussion is going. You have to be quick on your feet and understand what the situation is, and then take a call accordingly. It really all depends upon the context. There's no fixed formula that this is exactly how you need to be at all times. You obviously need to tweak your strategies a little depending upon the situation. What I have given are some basic strategies that people usually follow and people keep in mind, and these are like common accepted strategies worldwide. But of course, depending upon the situation, you tweak them and you try to see what works out the best. So again, it's all really relative.
Okay, Shakshi, we have one more question from Sangram. He's asking, what are the best practicable steps to negotiate during seed rounds in venture capitals, private equity, and angel investment? So he's given, like, presently Y Combinator has a benchmark agreement for this called SAFE. Now, in your expert opinion, how can we practice the best steps to negotiate a VC or PE agreement?
So are you speaking from the point of view as a person who wants to pitch their idea to a venture capitalist or a PE investor, or as a person who is a VC or a PE? Like, it depends upon which side you are on. So if you are a person who is pitching their startup to them, so it could happen that, you know, you could be on a lower footing than them. They might have a lot more, be on a higher footing than you, because they are the ones who will be paying you the money for your startup. So how you negotiate with them is you try to pitch them what you want. It becomes more of a pitch rather than a negotiation, because they have a higher footing in that case. But how you make it a little equal is by promising them more than promising them something that they really want, and showing that you actually have what it takes to deliver on that. So the skills in this case would be really refined depending upon the product that you're trying to pitch to them, or depending upon the sort of agreement you're planning to have with them. It's a very specific kind of situation. But if you have these basic principles in mind, I think it's a good starting point for you to be good to go.
Then we have what is your point when your client asks for unliquidated damages? And what if you have no other option?
Unliquidated damages, I mean, the question of that arises mostly, I think, in a court dispute, and even if in a negotiation, if the client wants damages which are not defined, which are to some extent which is not possible to be delivered, then you have to talk to your client and give them a reality check that, okay, this is why it may be possible. If it is possible, then you tell them that this is how it's possible. But if it's not possible, it's on you to give them a reality check that this is the best you can get out of it. And if you don't get this, this is what you can get out of it alternatively. So a lot of negotiations are not just about negotiating with the person opposite you. It's also about talking to your client and managing their expectations and trying to give them a reality check also. It's a really fine job, and it's a balancing act. As I said, you just do it with practice.
And how to negotiate when the other person is in a dominant position?
If they know they are in a dominant position, then it's a little difficult. But if they don't know about it, you don't need to make them known that, okay, you are in a dominant position. You try to, keep your cards close to your chest and try to still negotiate as if you're on an equal footing. That is where a little bit of manipulation comes in. But if they know that they are on a dominant footing and they know they can, steamroll you in some way. So the more important thing to do then is to see what your vatna is. Like, what is the worst alternative you have when the things are not going in your favor, when you feel that this negotiation may not go in your favor. So you need to come up with a vatna which would be acceptable to you. What is the worst alternative you have that would be acceptable to you? And you have to try to come to terms with it and make it better for you in some way possible.
Okay. I think many more questions are there, which are very common. So there are a lot of career related questions. How can we be a negotiator? How can we start our career in negotiation? So Shangshi, if you could just give like one or two suggestions, and then probably that will wrap up a lot of our questions.
Full disclosure, I'm not really professionally a negotiator. So my suggestions may be very basic, and I would really recommend you to do your own research on career options in ADR and negotiation. But I think the basic thing to do is, maybe like a lot of people, if they want to study it further, they go for LLMs in it. So maybe look up some good LLM programs on negotiation, look up some good programs on ADR and arbitration and all. And negotiation in India, I mean, it is picking up pace, but it's something, and you might, if you're working in a big law firm, if you're working, as a lawyer, as an independent practitioner, you might be negotiating on a daily basis. So that is where negotiation will play a part in your career. But if you just plan to be a negotiator, just plan to be a mediator, I'm not sure how India is doing well in that regard. And that is something that you will have to research on yourself. But there are a lot of opportunities abroad for sure, and you should definitely look up some programs online. There might be a lot of relevant information.
So great, Shangshi. I think we've covered a lot of questions. How much of a bluff can work in a negotiation?
Depends on how you're able to pull it off. It depends on how skilled you are, how far you can take that forward, and pray you don't get caught. It really depends on the situation.
Okay. Do we have any course specifically for negotiation? So I don't know your name because your name is coming as anonymous attendee, but let me tell you that the contract drafting and negotiation course covers a great deal of negotiation, and especially after the modification that we've come up with, it's going to cover a lot. And the negotiation table exercise will also ensure that you get the right experience and the right technique to negotiate. So, and plus, the plus point is that you obviously learn a lot about contract drafting as well. So it's like a win-win for you. So you can definitely explore to know more about that. And yes, of course, don't forget to use the code. I mean, we would not want you to pay the entire money if you've really stayed until the end of the webinar and made so much effort to gather so much knowledge. Can a first year law student also apply for the negotiation competition? Of course, you know, the earlier the better. There's so much more to learn. And of course, like for the competition, all of you are welcome. Dheeraj is asking, may I join this in December? So yes, Dheeraj, you can do that. You can enroll for December. There's one more course for November, December. How do you present your argument? Like example, negotiating a leave of absence or timing of a vacation.
Okay. So this is a very specific context that, you know, when you want your boss to give you some time off, and obviously when you sign a contract of employment with them, you are given certain leaves and you are given certain vacation dates. So how you avail them. I mean, this is something very tricky and we all face on a day-to-day basis. Depends on how your boss is, depends on how his mood is. And, you know, you need to see if at that time, will there be a lot of work or not? So a lot of factors go into planning this. But the most you can do is maybe try to do your work in advance, make sure that your team members are available on those dates to pick up the work for you. And, you know, bring up these points before your boss that, okay, look, I have kept all of this in place. I'm finishing this work in advance. This work I'll do once I come back, but I'm going to take a leave at this time. And you are entitled to those leaves as per your contract and under law. So it shouldn't be too hard to take it there.
So I think with this, we finally come to the end of our session. Thank you so much, learners, for being so patient and for attending the session. I hope it served the purpose. I hope it was fruitful and beneficial for you as well. And thank you so much, Shreyanshi, for being so, first of all, the time and effort that Shreyanshi has put in to collaborate this entire content into, such constricted and simple manner so that all of us are able to learn. So see you soon, all of you. Hope to see a lot of you associated with us. And yeah, keep learning, keep studying. Have a great Sunday. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.
Bye. Good evening.